Hello there and welcome to Walker Analytics. I'm Wesley Walker, the founder of Walker Analytics, and today's video I'm going to provide a full tutorial of Google Analytics 4, otherwise known as GA4. So if any of you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more Google Analytics 4 videos, tutorials, reviews and more. And drop a like down below if you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single one of our GA4 videos. We're going to be doing a lot more GA4 videos, with there being not a lot of time left now until the rollout from Universal to GA4 will be complete, at least for the free accounts. So make sure that you stay tuned to keep on touch with all of the videos as we update you through this migration process. So the first step of getting access to Google Analytics 4 is installing the actual code onto your website. So there are a couple of ways to do this. If you're brand new to Google Analytics and you've not used Universal Analytics, when you Google Analytics, you'll be greeted with this page, which gives you insights into what Google Analytics is and the benefits that it can provide your business. You'll then need to click this Get Started Today link, and it'll take you through a form and process where you provide the information about your business, and it takes you through the steps of setting up. However, if you have used Google Analytics 4, which I imagine a lot of you have, then you will see a page like this within your properties, and then you'll have this button here to click Create Property. So what we'll do now is we'll go through this flow of where you click the Create New Property journey, and I'll show you how to create a new GA4 property. So first, when you click Create a New Property, you're asked to give in a few details, and the details you see here will be very similar to the details that you're asked when you're a new customer and you go through the new flow. So first will be property name. So I'll call this Analytics Test. And property naming really just depends on what it is that you're trying to track. So if you're trying to track the website, many people just put in the domain name of the website, or you can simply put in the business name. It's entirely up to you what you want to call it. So I'm going to click next. And then we have business details. So you have to select an industry. So I will select computers and electronics for mine, small, and then next. And then business objective. So this is a fairly new feature where Google Analytics 4 will ask you, what is the objective of your business? What are you trying to achieve? Is it an e-commerce business? Are you a lead generation business? You're trying to raise brand awareness, examine user behavior, or get based on reports. So I believe most scenarios you're going to be choosing these two, whether you want to capture leads and be in a service business or be in an e-commerce business. These are probably the majority of your choices. So in my case, I'm going to choose generate leads. Cool. So now you can begin to start collecting data once you complete this step. And the unique feature of Google Analytics 4 is that you have the ability to capture web data, app data, or both within one property. And you have to simply create a data stream for each type of data type, and it will all come into one property. Similar to how you used to track app and web data within Universal Analytics. So we'll choose web data, and now we need to enter in the URL. So I'm going to enter in the URL for my website, which is analytics.co.uk, and we'll call the stream name the same as the property name. Well, in fact, we'll just keep it Walk Analytics. Cool, and then create a stream. So now you're given the information that you need in order to actually implement Google Analytics onto your website. There are two ways that you can do this. One is by implementing the G tag, the Google tag, directly onto your website. Or the second method is through doing it through Google Tag Manager. My preferred preference is always doing it through Google Tag Manager because I just think it's cleaner and easier to manage multiple tags when you use a tag management platform like GTM. So we'll be doing it via this method within this video. So all we need in order to do it within Google Tag Manager is this measurement ID, which is right here. So let's copy that. So now I have my Google Tag Manager container, which has already been pre-built. And what I'm going to do now is create a tag for GA4 so that I can send data to the new property that I have just created. So I'm going to click Add a New Tag, and we'll use the GA4 configuration tag. And all you simply need to do is paste your measurement ID here. So now this will include, so now what this tag will do is that every time it fires on a page view once I include the trigger. Page views and general out-of-the-box metrics will all be captured and sent to Google Analytics 4. So I need to create a trigger. We'll do all pages for this example, and then I'll name my tag. So I'll call it GA4 configuration all pages. And I already have a tag, so I'll call it GA4 test configuration all pages. Great, and so now I will quickly preview that just to make sure it works. Great, and now we can see that the GA4 test configuration tag has fired right here, which is exactly what we wanted. So we can close this now and simply submit the changes and call it GA4 test. And we can publish this change. Great, so now if we return to Google Analytics, we can simply close this and then click next and then click continue to home. So with Google Analytics 4, the data actually appearing within your reports will take about 48 hours to process. It does take longer time than it used to in Universal Analytics. However, you should still see real-time data within the real-time report. So what we'll do now is we'll move over to a property that already has some data, just so you can see a good example of what a fully running GA4 property actually looks like. Great, so now what we can see here is the GA4 merchandising shop. So this is the demo account for Google Analytics 4, and this is a property that has lots of data and has been running for a while. So what we agreed here initially is the home screen. So we can see lots of out-of-the-box data within this screen. So you can see the count of users that have been tracked on this website over the last 7 days, with the number of events that have been captured, the count of conversions, and the count of new users as well. It says 7 days, but you can change this to multiple date ranges. So if you want to look at just today so far, you can. If you want to look at 28 days, 90 days, you can change the date range, and then the report will amend accordingly. You also have a screen here for real-time users. So the real-time report includes data that was recorded within the last 30 minutes. So you can see there were 59 users in the last 30 minutes, and you can see the country that they came from and the total count by country as well. You're also shown shortcuts to different reports across Google Analytics 4. So you have the recently accessed section here, which takes you through conversion paths that I previously viewed before, model comparison, and all other reports that you view within the property will be shown here. You also have other reports that are suggested for you to view, so that Google Analytics 4 thinks might be useful for yourself, which includes, in this case, a breakdown of sessions by the default channel grouping, you have users by country ID, and a similar card to the above, but focusing on just events. So mostly on events. You have event count of users, event per user, etc. So in this instance, insights and recommendations aren't appearing for the account, but on the screen I'll show you an example of what you typically would see with an account that does have insights and recommendations enabled. So now we will move on to the report section. So first of all, you're shown a reports snapshot, which is an overview of lots of key bits of information that are captured within Google Analytics 4. So it's slightly different to what you see on the homepage view. You'll see that you have similar cards that we saw before, but with different metrics. So you see a breakdown of users overall, new users, average engagement time, which is similar to average session duration, except for the fact that it looks at the session duration of only engaged users and not just all users on a whole. And then you have the total revenue count within here as well. You also have a view of real-time users to the site, and insights again on the right hand side. and then you have more information than you did on the homepage. So you have a breakdown of new users by first default channel group, and you can actually change it within this report snapshot to be different dimensions that might be more useful to yourself. You then have a session breakdown by session medium, but again, you can change this to be a different dimension. And then you also have users by country, and in this case, you can change it from being just users overall to new users or returning users, and you will see different data as a result. You also have a view on the active users, so you can see user activity over time. So this is a trend of active users to your website or app over the time. In this case, we're looking at just the website. You also have a user cohort within GA4, which was also within Universal Analytics beforehand. So GA4 also has a user activity cohort, which was similar to what you used to have within Universal Analytics. And this will show you the retention that you have for your users within a weekly period. And you can see a full, more detailed view when you click into this view retention section here. You also have the pages and screens that get viewed the most often. And this is broken down by views, and it's showing the page title itself. So this would be your meta title for those SEO nerds out there who will know exactly what that means. You also have your top events. So you have the event name and the total event count within there. And you have conversions by event name, items purchased by item name, which was previously product within Universal Analytics. And you have your conversions by platform within here as well. So if you're tracking web and app conversions, then this would be useful. But in most cases, you're probably tracking just one platform, so you won't see anything very useful within this view. What some of you may have noticed already is that within GA4, we have thresholding, just like we used to have in Universal Analytics, which is previously known as sampling. So you'll see when the thresholding has or hasn't been applied based on this little icon here. So you can see, for example, here, and that thresholding has been applied to this card, meaning that you're not seeing the full amount of data behind it. And when you have a green tick here, it means it's unsampled. You're seeing 100% of all of the data. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at some of your insights. When thresholding has been applied, then you know that you're not looking at all of your data, which is an unfortunate feature from Google Analytics that has been there since Universal Analytics and has unfortunately carried over into GA4. One way that you can get full access to your data without having to worry about thresholding at all is to export your data into Google BigQuery, which is actually a lot more simpler within GA4 than it was in Universal Analytics. And that way you get a full export of 100% of your data and you don't have to worry about thresholding at all. Within the report snapshot and within other reports as well, you also have the option to add a comparison. So this means that you can add a segment which you can compare between the main segment, which is on all reports, which is all users. So let's say, for example, you wanted to look at just users from a specific country. So we've looked at all countries and we chose United States. What this does, it creates the condition, which is all countries, which only includes countries that are from the US. So let's click apply. And now we can see the view has changed. So we see a different view of all of the data where we can see all users versus just US users. So you can see multiple line graphs within this card now. You can see there's a duplication of each card now. So you can see total users in the last 30 minutes, the real-time view, and then also just from the United States. You can see the breakdown of channel, campaigns, everything is duplicated to align with that segment. If you also just want to see a specific type of data, so let's say we just want to see data with countries from the United States, then we just simply click the X and then the entire dashboard will look like it did before, but you're only looking at United States sessions rather than looking at everybody. At the top right here, you have the date range. So again, by default, it typically is set to the last 28 days or the last 7 days when you're on the home screen, but you have lots of options to be able to change the date range and also a custom option here if you wanted something very specific. You can also compare the data ranges as well. So let's say we wanted to look at the last 28 days versus the same period last year by matching the day of the week. We click apply, and you will now be able to see that percent change for the key measures. So you can see that users were down 21% versus the same period last year. You can see how much direct traffic they had this year versus the previous year, and all the other scorecards will be amended as a result. Some scorecards won't be updated to show that view because it's not valuable, such as the user cohort, for example, doesn't update to show you that view. But all the other scorecards do provide that year-over-year view. And real-time view doesn't provide that year-over-year view, but all the other scorecards will provide that view based on your comparison. You also have the ability to go back into edit comparisons. So if you click here, it allows you to edit the comparison again. If you click here, you'll be able to share this report, and you can get a link and you can copy and share it to your colleagues. So anyone else who has access to Google Analytics 4, you'll be able to share this link to them directly. And then you also have the option to pull in some custom insights in here. So this is where you can ask Google's AI and to provide you some insights on your data. So for example, if we want to know how many users did I have last week, if you click it, it will tell you exactly that number. So if you would rather have Google Analytics tell you like quick insights for your data rather than you have to try and go through and find it yourself, this is a very useful feature to help you, with that situation. One other thing that you can do, which we can't currently see on the demo account, is that you also have the option to customize the report as well. So if you are an administrator or owner of the GA4 property, you can actually add and remove cards that you don't want to see, or you do want to see within your report. So we're on the report snapshot, and let's say we don't care about insights, we don't want to see it, you can click X and insights will be removed. You can also add new cards as well. So let's say, for example, we want to pull in like product revenue by product ID, or users by town and city. You can add those cards into here, and then they will also be shown onto your report here as well. Once you've added in and removed cards and made the report the way you like, all you simply have to do is save. You can either save it as a new report, or you can save it and save the changes to the current report, and it will override what you currently had, which is a very, very useful feature. New to GA4, couldn't previously do that to this extent within Universal Analytics. So now we'll move on to the real-time view. So within GA4, this is the real-time report section, and it gives you an overview of users who have viewed your website within the last 30 minutes. So you can see here that we have a card which looks at how many users you've had and how that has trended over that time period, and you get a breakdown by device as well. Similar to the other reports, you have options to customize this, so you can add a comparison, you can edit comparisons, go full screen on this, or share the report. You can also view a snapshot of a random user as well. So when you click into this, this shows you one of your very specific users, and it's giving you more details. So we can see, looking at a specific user who's from Japan, and we see they fired the view promotion event. And this gives you a bit of a drill down into that specific user and what they've been doing on your website. Then further below, you have a few scorecards. So you have the total of users who visited your website in the last 30 minutes by their first user source. So essentially what website they've come from. As you can see, Google, there were 10 that came from Google, being Google search, direct, or a newsletter. You can see them by their audience as well. So if you set up audiences within GA4, which we will get onto, you can see the breakdown of users from those specific audiences that you've created as well. You can see the views by page title, the event count by event name, conversions by the event name, and also users by user property as well. So if you have user property set up, this will also appear within GA4. Great, so next we'll go on to acquisition. Okay. So within the acquisition section, you have the acquisition overview, and like the reports snapshot, this is an overview report which shows you the top line stats for the acquisition section. So this is the area where you'll get into a bit more of a deep dive into channel performance, into campaign performance, source, medium, essentially finding out how you've acquired users and how they've come to your website, and where essentially your users have come from. So again, we have very similar look and feel with the date range filters. You have the comparison view, edit, comparison, share the report, insights. And then here we have the total number of users, new users, and then against that period over time. You have a real-time view, but it doesn't give you any acquisition data. It's just by top country, so it's probably not very useful. But you have new users by first used channel, default channel, but you can change that to be campaign, source, medium, whichever you think is more useful. And you also have sessions instead of new users by a similar view. You also have sessions, and that's broken down by Google Ads campaign, but you can change this to be, whatever Google Ads metric you'd like it to be. And then you also have the lifetime value of your users as well. So this will only be available if you're capturing purchases on your website. So it have to be either an e-commerce store or a lead generation store where you assign a value to your conversions. But either way, if you don't assign a value to your conversions, you won't be able to get this lifetime value chart here. You'll also be able to edit this page as well if you're an admin for the GA4 property. In this example, we don't see the edit icon because I'm not the admin, but when you create your own GA4 property, you will be able to edit this page as well. So now we're going to user acquisition. So now we'll notice that this is a different page, and what this essentially is that there are two types of reports within GA4. One is an overview report, and then one is a detail report. So what we've seen up until this point have been overview reports. We have lots of cards on a page with top level insights. And what we're seeing right now is a detail report. So detail reports contain two graphs and then a table below it with more detailed information. So what we can see is a more detailed view of users by the default channel grouping over time. So you can see the default channel grouping over time broken down by new users. And you can also see a view of that in a bar chart view as well. Then further down below, you have the individual channel groupings, and you have them broken down by the key metrics of GA4. So if we just remove this compare for now, just so it's a bit more clearer, you can see that we have first user default channel group, which is selected by default. However, you can change this to be a different view. So if you want to look at source, medium, platform breakdown, you could see that view as well. So you have all the channels within here, and then you have the GA4 metrics. So you have new users, the engaged sessions, the engagement rate, which is essentially the rate of sessions that were engaged sessions. Then you have the engaged sessions per user, the average engagement time, and the total event count, which on its own is not very useful. However, if you want to see a specific event, if you click the drop down, you can see something more specific. So if for example, add to cart was more valuable to you, then you can change that view to be add to cart. You also have conversions as well. Again, conversions just on its own won't be very useful, but if you want to specify a specific one, such as purchase, you can do that. So now you can see the purchases per channel, which is a much more useful view. And you have the total revenue as well, as a result, of which will be assigned to purchases for each channel. And again, like the other sections, you can add comparisons, you can edit comparisons, share this report, and you can also edit this page as well if you are an administrator. You can also add a filter to this view as well, because detailed views allow you to add specific filters. So let's say you only want to look at a specific source. So if you only want to look at a first user source that was equal to Google, then you can click that and then click apply. And it will only show you the channels where Google was the source. Also, if you want to do, for example, excluding a specific source, so let's say you want to look at everything apart from direct, click apply, it will update the detailed view as a result. So you can see that that is now filter the data. Cool. So now we'll move on to traffic acquisition. So traffic acquisition is essentially the exact same view as user acquisition. The only difference here is that you're looking at sessions instead of new users. So we have the exact same views that we did before. However, the charts are using a session metric instead of users. And then you have sessions actually pulling in here as well as a metric. So you have total users, sessions, engaged sessions, average engagement time per session. You have more session focused metrics within here. And then you can see the same views as before: revenue, conversions, event count, etc. It's all within there. So now we'll go into the engagement section. Great. So again, we're in a overview. So you can see the overview of the engagement section for GA4. So engagement is quite a key measure within GA4, whereas previously Universal Analytics would focus on like bounce rate. GA4 focuses on engagement and engagement rate. So engagement rate is essentially the reverse of bounce rate within GA4. So it looks at people who actually interact with your website, who fire events, and whether that be via scrolling or viewing more pages, anything where an interaction essentially happens on your website or app is considered an engagement. So what we can see here is the average engagement time. So this is the average time from when a user landed on your website and was interacting, having engagements, and the actual time they were actually on your website doing stuff. And then you have the engaged sessions per user on average. And if you go across, you can see more engagement metrics here as well. You again have users in the last 30 minutes, which for us, not very useful for an engagement view. Then you have how many page views you had and the total event counts over time as well. You then have the total number of events by event name. You have views by the page title and screen. User activity over time, so these are your active users over time within a specific cohort. So 30-day active users, 7-day active users, one-day active users. And you have user stickiness as well. So this is your daily active users divided by your monthly active users, and by weekly, and then weekly active users by monthly active users. So this is very important measures for businesses that are tracking apps and have software platforms, or specifically with subscription services as well. These will be metrics that will be very useful for yourself. We then get into the events section, and now this is again another detailed report, but it's focusing on event name this time around. So you can see the total number of events by your top event names and a bar chart view of that as well. And then you have the individual event names down below, and you have the total event count, total users who created one of those events, triggered one of those events, then you have the event count per user, and the total revenue that's assigned to the events as well. By default, you only have 10 rows per page, but you can change this to be more than that. So we could choose 25, for example, and there is pagination, so you can go to different pages and see what the end results were as a result. We then go into conversions. So now conversions is essentially events within GA4 that have been marked as a conversion. And we'll show you how you can do that when we get to the admin section of this tutorial. But these are essentially all the events that have been marked as conversion. So it's the same view pretty much as the event report that we just saw, but only events that are conversions are pulling up. And as a result, you can see all the event names that have been marked as conversions and the revenue that's been assigned to them. And then of course, in this instance, only purchase has revenue assigned. Great, so now we have another detailed page and detailed report. And now we're looking at pages and screens. So the reason it's called pages and screens is because GA4 is meant for capturing app and web data. So a URL is a page for web and a screen for an app. So you can see both of those things within this report essentially. So what we have here is page path and screen class, but because this is just a web GA4 property, we'll only be seeing page URLs. And this is where you can see page level data. So again, above here, you can see the top pages and by the page views over time. And then we can see the individual pages here. So we can see how many page views each page has had, amount of users that have viewed that page or interacted with that page, views per user, the average engagement time per page, the total event count on the page. But again, on its own isn't very useful, so you can amend this to be specific events. And then you have conversions on that page, and then the total revenue by this page as well. We then have landing page, which is again the exact same layout of the report, except that we're missing the bar chart view. But we now have more of a session-based approach. So you can see sessions by those landing pages over time. And at the bottom, we have the landing page itself. And then you have the sessions, users, new users, and other KPIs by landing page, essentially. We'll now get into the monetization section. So monetization is essentially your e-commerce section. So if you have an e-commerce store that you've created your GA4 property for, then you will see this view, and new users who create GA4 property from this point onwards won't see this view at all because it's not relevant to them. So within here, it's all about purchases, products, and your overall e-commerce performance. So we have a similar setup again. We're looking at a report overview template, and we can see some key cards here. So you can see your total revenue and your purchase revenue over time. The difference between total revenue and purchase revenue is that purchase revenue will be specifically revenue that come from your purchases. However, monetization overview doesn't just focus on purchases that come from e-commerce, but also if you have like subscription purchases or any revenue that comes in from adverts on your website, that will also be shown in this report as well. So that's the difference between total and purchase revenue. And you have total ad revenue within here as well. In this case, this website doesn't have any advertising on it, so there's no ad revenue that's being gained as a result. You then have your total purchases and then your first time purchases captured there as well. You have the average purchase amount by user, and then you have a bit more granular detail into the products themselves. So you have items purchased by the item name, which is the product name. And you have the items purchased by the item list name as well. So this would be like a category essentially, so the category of the products that were sold. And then you have the items viewed in promotion by their promotion name. So if you have promotions on within GA4, that data will be captured and you can see the individual items that were viewed within a promotion essentially. You then have purchase revenue by order coupons. So coupons, discount codes are captured within the order coupon field. And then you have product revenue by product ID. So if you have a product ID captured, that will fall into here. Typically most retailers would want to put SKU code in their product ID, for example. And then you have publish ad impressions by ad unit. So this is again, if you're putting adverts on your website through Google AdSense, then insights from that will appear within this report. Cool, so we now have another detailed report focused on e-commerce purchases. So you can see the total number of items that were viewed over time. Then you have a scatter graph here of your items viewed by the number of times that they were added to the cart. And further below we have a table view again. So as you will notice by now, the templates are very consistent across GA4. So once you understand the report overview and report detail, it becomes a lot easier to understand the others. So you have the item name, which is the product name, the name of your product. And then you have how many times it was viewed, how many times it added to the cart, how many times it was purchased, and then the revenue by the item, which is a product, essentially within this report here. Then have in-app purchases. So if you're capturing app data, you will have in-app purchase data captured within here. Again, in this example, we're focusing on web data, so you won't see anything within here. But if you have GA4 implemented on your app, this is where the data will sit. Cool, and then you have the same thing for published ads. So if you have Google AdSense integrated on your website and you're running ads on there, you'll see information on that within this section. Cool, so you also have the user purchase journey, which is the funnel. So this is your e-commerce funnel, and this is where you can find it within GA4. So you can see the steps which are done in here for you. So you can see, for example, the session starts with someone who started the session on your website, who then went on to view a product, added it to basket, began a checkout, and then made a purchase. And you can see the percentage of each step previously that was actually made as a result. The abandonment rate within GA4 is the percentage of active users who start one step but don't continue to the next. So you can see, for example, within here, that session start, we had 62,000 active users who started the session. However, there's a 74% abandonment rate, which means that of 46K users, only 16,000 continue to view a product. So it's essentially the abandonment rate of the next step. So you can see that 99% didn't actually go on to the next step, which was to add a basket, and 33% didn't go on to the next step of beginning checkout. So that's essentially what abandonment rate means. You also have the breakdown of device categories, so you can see individual step broken down by device. GA4 does also allow you to have a custom funnel where if you click into the view funnel steps, you're able to define each individual step that you want to be seen in the funnel. So for example, if you don't like the default view that you're seeing, you can change it within here by changing the metric that is shown. In this example, we don't have access to the GA4 demo account, so we can't change the individual metrics, but with your own property, you'll simply just click this section here and then change it from session start to whatever metric you want it to be. You can also delete steps and add new steps and really customize and have your very own funnel within GA4. Great, so we'll now move on to the retention section. So the retention section is just an overview report that we get again, and this focuses on how frequently people are returning to your website and how many new people you're getting. It also provides you views of cohorts and lifetime value as well. So again, similar setup, we have the all users, date range, and the options to edit comparisons, share, and insights. And again, if you own this property, you have a pencil icon here which will allow you to edit it. So you have a view of the new users over time and the return users over time. You then have a user retention by cohort, so you can see what percentage of users return within day 1 or within day 7. And you also have a user engagement by cohort as well, so you can see what their engagement time was by cohort. So if people return on day 1, how much time are they spending on their session, and also within day 7 you can see that view as well. And down below you can see the actual user retention in the form of a graph instead of a cohort. So you can see on day 0 you have 100% of users, on day 1 it drops to 4%, day 2 1.5%, and you can see over time that retention of the users. You can also see the same view but with user engagement time instead, and then you have the lifetime value of your users, which we've seen before on other reports. So now we'll move on to user demographics. Within user demographics, we are given an overview report template, again, of all the demographics of our users. So demographics within GA4 simply is the users' location, gender, and if you've enabled Google Signals, you'll also be able to pull in their interests and their age as well. So demographics within GA4 is simply out of the box a user's location. However, if you have enabled Google Signals, which is quite problematic within Europe, you will be able to pull in data such as the interests, age, and gender of the users. So here again, we can see the country by users, and you can change this to be new or returning users. You can see real-time users by their country. And you can also see by town and city level, and you can also see the gender splits of your users as well. You can see their interests, so these are other websites that they like to engage with. You can see their age, and you can also see their language as well. When we go into detail, we can see a view at the top of users by country over time, and then you get to see a table view of pretty much what we saw on the overview, but with just a lot more information. So by default, we have country, and you can see the total number of users, new users, engaged sessions, engagement rate, engaged sessions per user, and lots of other KPIs that you'd expect to see. However, you can change this to be any of the other demographic dimensions. So if we want to look at age, for example, you have this enabled, this will pull in. So you'll see that there's an unknown section for age. So a lot of the age of users won't actually, Google Analytics won't actually be able to tell it. And that's because with Google Signals, Google uses data that they gather from Google Chrome and signed in users, and they map that with their own users on your website and tie that in with Google Analytics to give you this extra information. But of course, they won't be able to have that data for everybody because people on Safari Other browsers not logged into Google, they won't be able to match up that data with your own analytics data. But that's essentially the demographics section. So now we'll move over to tech. Great, so now we're on to the technology overview, which gives you a top level view of the technology used by your users. So the first card we have is users by platform, which we've seen before. Only really useful if you're capturing web and app properties. You have the real-time view of that also by platform. Then you have users by operating system, so you can see whether they're using Android, Windows, Macintosh, iOS, Chrome, etc. And you can change that to be different measures as well. This time you get to pull in total revenue. You can see users by platform or device category, and you can see users by the browser that they're coming from, by the device category that they use in a pie chart view, and by their screen resolution as well. You can have that pulled in. You also have data specifically for app users. So if you're capturing app insights while within GA4, you can pull in the app version, the latest app release overview, stability, and then the users by their individual device model as well. When we get into the detailed view, we can see a view at the top of users by their browser over time. And then at the bottom view, you have browser, and then you have all the key KPIs of GA4 that you'd expect. And of course, you can change this to be any other tech-based dimension that might be useful to you. So you could pull in, for example, screen resolution, and that will change the data. And it also changes the data above. You could also search as well. If you want to see individual screen resolutions or anything specific to the dimension, you can search it and it will show you just that specific field there as well. And that is it for the report section of GA4. This is probably the most important section of GA4 because it will be where you as a business will probably be spending most of your time within the platform, trying to understand the insights and see how your business is doing. So understanding how the reports section within GA4 works is probably one of the most important areas of upskilling and learning about Google Analytics 4. So next we'll go into the Explore section of GA4. So explorations within GA4 are a completely new feature, and this is where you can create custom visualizations of your data within GA4. So it allows you to create quick visualizations of data that you don't typically get within the reports, and it can be very useful for just getting a good understanding of your data, but also giving you custom insights that are just quick and easy to get access to. So within explorations, there are templates that you are given, but you can also create a blank canvas from the beginning. When we click into the templates, we can see all the different types that are available. So you get a free form, which is just a normal table. You have funnel exploration, so you can create your own custom funnel and view it as an exploration. You have path exploration, so you can view user paths and user journeys for your website. You have segment overlap, so you can see how much overlap there are between two groups. Cohort exploration, and then user lifetime as well. You also have use cases, so this is where you can choose a specific use case and GA4 will build an exploration for you, and industries, which will help you with the build of your exploration as well. For the purpose of this tutorial, we will build a blank canvas exploration. Cool, so we're in explorations now, and you can see this is quite different to the way how the rest of GA4 works. So on the left-hand side, we have the name of the exploration, which is currently unnamed, the date range. We have segments that we've created, dimensions and metrics. So before we can build an exploration, we need to import the data that we want to see within our blank canvas here. So let's start off by importing some dimensions that we might be interested in. So now you can see all the different types of dimensions that are available to us. So we can see them broken down by different categories, and this will all depend on what it is that you like to see. By default, you're shown all dimensions that are currently tracked, but you can look at predefined dimensions, which dimensions that are captured out of the box, and also custom dimensions that you and your team have implemented yourself in order to capture within GA4. So if we put in a few ones that might be useful, so let's put age, gender, and let's pull in page, so say host name, page title, and page path and screen pass. And let's put in some metrics. So let's put in some session level metrics, so session, and let's put in users as well, so put in active users. Let's also put in some segments. So with GA4, there are 3 types of segments that you can make. You can make a user segment, you can make a session level segment, or you can create a event segment. So this will all really depend on what it is that you're trying to achieve. If, for example, you want to look at users who recently purchased a product from you, then you create a user level segment. If you want to create a segment for all traffic that came from a specific campaign that you ran, then you use a session level segment. And if you want to look at every time that a specific page is viewed, then you want to create a event level segment. There are also suggested segments within here, which will be created for you if you click, and you have general, shopping, templates, and then predictive segments within here as well, which are pretty useful because it makes it easier for you to create a segment, especially if you're not very savvy at doing this yourself. So let's pull in non-purchasers, so users who didn't make a purchase. You'll also notice as well that when you're creating a segment, you have the option to build an audience. So audiences within GA4 are quite similar to Universal Analytics in the fact that you can create a audience which is based on a segment of your users, which you can then use for marketing campaigns. So if you wanted to, for example, export an audience of users who didn't purchase but have been on your website and viewed some products, then you can create an audience like we can right here by clicking build an audience, and you can then export that audience to Google Ads, and you can do remarketing to that specific audience to try and entice them to come back and make a purchase on your website. So it's a very powerful feature of GA4. For this section, we won't go into that, but that is one way that you can build an audience within GA4. So let's click save and apply. Great. And we now have all the information that we need. So we have our segments, dimension, and metrics all already available on the left-hand side. So now what we have to do is bring them onto the right-hand side in order for us to begin to visualize and build this canvas. So we have rows and columns on the right-hand side, and depending on how we want to break this down, we'll put it in a way that we see fit. So let's stick with rows for now. So let's look at page path, and then values is where you're dropping your metrics. So let's pull in active users by page path. So what you see is that you get the total number of active users by the page path that we have within here. So there's lots falling into not set, which could be because of the value that we've assigned. So let's try and pull in a different value instead. So if we pull in views, and let's try and replace active users with views. Great. And now we have the breakdown of views by each individual page, which is essentially page views. So we have non-purchase in here, but let's say we want to compare non-purchases to purchases. So if we create another segment, select purchases, and then when it loads, let's save and apply. And we can now see that breakdown. So you can see purchases versus non-purchases, and then what pages they frequently saw as a result. So you can see lots of them visiting individual item lists or individual products themselves in that case. So by default, this is looking at a freeform table, but we can change it to be a different view. So if we wanted it to be a pie chart instead, we can change that visualization. And yeah, so you can see the breakdown of the pages for each individual page. So other is all the pages that aren't counted because we're looking at 10 slices. But if we increase that view will change as a result because more pages are now included. You can change it to be a line chart, so you can look at a trended view of that over time. You can see there was one day where an individual page got a lot of views, more than usual. And you can also change this to be different views as well. So we're looking at a funnel, but you can check freeform exploration. But again, you can look at cohorts, custom funnels, segment overlap, path exploration, and user lifetimes as well. So lots of different ways that you can change and manipulate this visualization within explorations. You can also have more than one visualization per exploration. So let's say, for example, we wanted this to be just non-purchases. And let's remove purchases. We can create a new tab, and you can again change it to be whichever one you wanted it to be. We'll stick with freeform, and then you can pull in purchases. And then let's pull in page path and views, and then we'll now have that value. So it's purchases, and this now gives us that view. So you now have a breakdown of non-purchases and how they performed, and we can change that to be 10 bar charts instead. And then we can have a breakdown of just purchases as well. So you have the ability to add in multiple sheets within one exploration, which can help you to break it down a bit easier and just give you lots more information as a result. By default, explorations will only be saved for yourself individually. However, if you'd like to save them with members of your team, if you click this plus icon here, it will allow you to share it, and that will allow you to share it with everyone in your team. So not just you will see it, anyone who logs into GA4 and goes to explorations, they will also be able to see this exploration as well. And the last thing you'd want to do is to give it a name. So we could call it test exploration, but in your case, you could call it whatever you see fit. And then there it is, saved. Cool. So the next section is around advertising. In my experience, this is probably one of the least viewed areas of GA4, but it's worthwhile you just being aware of it, and it could be fairly valuable and fairly useful to you as your team. So the first section we have is the advertising snapshot, and this is more of an area into like acquisition almost. Gives you a bit of insights into channel performance. So you have the conversions by your default channel group, which you would have seen before in acquisition. And then you have conversion paths, which looks at direct, or looks at default channels again, and the total volume of conversions. However, we do get into more detail into that in a separate report. So if we go on to all channels, we then get a view which is similar to the acquisition view, but we do have some more information in here. So you can see that there's the number of conversions, look at channel over time at the top, and we have the conversion, and we have the channel groups at the bottom of the table. However, we have conversions, but we also have a new measure, which is advertising cost. So the advertising cost from Google Ads will actually be pulled into this report, and that can be demonstrated within this report that you see here. So across the network, you can see the actual advertising cost for that, which gives you a view of cost per conversion, total revenue, and return on ad spend will be revealed within here as well. So this can be fairly useful once you connect Google Ads to GA4, because then you can start to see some of that those cost metrics pulled in and visualized within this report here. So within model comparison, GA4 provides a comparison of different attribution models, and you can see within this report how it impacts your data and how it impacts your channel's performance. So we have on the left-hand side here, so you have attribution model, which is non-direct, cross-channel last click model, and then you have the attribution model, which is the data-driven model rather than the last click model. And in here you can see the difference between the two, so you can see whether there's any difference in allocation to conversions by channel, and it actually shows you the percent difference as a result. So you can see that on the data-driven model, there are 0.3% less conversion attributed to organic search than there are on the last click model. And you can see that versus the revenue difference as well. You can change it to have different views in here. So if you want to look at first click instead, you can change that, and then you'll see the difference in the attribution models. This just essentially gives you that ability to look at different attribution models and how it impacts your data. So you can see attribution models, last click, first click, linear, position based, time decay, and then you can look at an ads preferred last click attribution model if you so wish. So the conversion path sections shows you the breakdown of each conversion step based on the attribution model. So in this instance, we're looking at the data-driven attribution model, which gives specific weightings to each touch point. So in this example, the early touch points have got about 9% of the weighting, the mid touch points have got 13%, and then the late touch points have got around 77% of the weighting. So this means that early touch points get a lower attribution of conversions, versus the late touch points, we get to the highest attribution of conversions. So if we change this to last click, for example, 100% of the attributions go to the late touch points. And if you change it to first click, 100% of the early touch points gets the attribution. Whereas Google's data-driven model, it's split differently as a result. So the table at the below shows the breakdown of each default channel grouping by its number of conversions, but also by its touch points. So for example, we know that sessions or users that had one direct touch point had 172,500 conversions, and cross network had almost 78,000. However, users that had 4 organic touch points had 18,683 conversions. So what this does is it shows you the total number of conversions and the revenue per channel, also per touch point as well, which is why you have organic search, which is just 1 touch point, and organic search times 4, where users had 4 touch points with organic. So it just gives you better context and greater context into how often users are coming to these individual channels and how much that equates to the conversions and the revenue that your business gains as a result. So that is it for the conversion path section of GA4. We'll now get into the admin side of GA4 to give you a greater understanding of how the administration works for GA4. So within GA4, setup is slightly similar to Universal Analytics, but there are some changes. So you do have your account settings, your account access management, filters, change history, and the rubbish bin, pretty much like you used to have within Universal Analytics. When you open up the account settings, you can see the information around your account, so the account name, the ID, and all the options that you had within there before. You can set this up to your own desirability. There are no real recommendations from my part on how to set this part up. It's just whatever you're comfortable with and how you want your business to be done. You also have the account access management as well. So this is who has access to the account. So at the moment for the account level, it's just me. But if you're an organization with many members, you'd see all that information within here. And the organization admin or the administrator would be able to add or remove users as they see fit. You have the auto filters section as well, but this will only count for your Universal Analytics filters. So for GA4, this isn't really relevant for the tutorial. You can have change to your account history, so you can see all the changes that have been made over time, which is really useful. And then you also have rubbish bin as well. So if you delete any properties, they'll be seen within this view here. So within the property area, you have setup assistant. So this is what will help you when you're setting up your GA4 property. So you can see kind of like areas that you might want to check out. So data collection, first one, you can see that in this instance it is flown. However, there are some steps that aren't done. So you can see turn on Google Signals, which allows better ads personalization and allows you to capture more user information such as gender and age, etc. We've got to set up conversions, defining audiences, and also the Google Ads link as well can be seen within here. There's also the advanced setup options, which Setup Assistant helps you with, which is around importing your data into Google BigQuery, managing users of the property, setting up a user ID. So if people can actually log into your website or app, you want to set up a user ID, which allows you to get better user numbers within GA4. And you can use the measurement protocol as well, which will be more useful for developers. So you have the property settings here where you have the name of the property, change some filters, and make the property just a little bit more relevant to your business if you've not done already. All that information is in here. You can also delete the property if you need to, and it's no longer relevant as well. You have property access management, which is the same as account access management, but just for the property. And then you have your data streams as well. So you can have multiple data streams per property. So in this instance, I have just a data stream for the website, but GA4 allows you to capture web and app simultaneously. So if I wanted to capture an iOS app or Android app data stream as well, you can do that. And then when you click on the options, it takes you through all the options you need to do in order to create that data stream. You can also create a data stream for multiple websites as well. So if you want to have cross-domain tracking enabled, that is one solution that you can put in place. So you have multiple data streams per domain, and that can help you to have all that data within one property as well. If you are looking to get cross-domain tracking implemented with your GA4 account and you'd like some help with that, I do provide GA4 consultations, and a link to that will be in the description of this video. So within this section, you have the events. So this is the section where all of your events that are being tracked in GA4 will be displayed. You can mark your events as conversion within here, which is quite an important feature. So if you created a custom event for, say, for example, purchases or lead generations, this is the area of GA4 where you'll go, and then you'll mark it as conversion. And then from that point onwards, within your reports, that event itself would highlight as a conversion, which gives you a bit more useful data, because then you can start to work out a conversion rate and other useful measures within your reports that we went through beforehand. Within the events section as well, you can also create events only based off existing events within GA4. So if you had an event that had specific parameters within GA4 and you wanted to create an event based off that, you can do that within this configuration within here. So you can give it a custom event name, you can choose the parameter, and you can choose the value, and then from that you can create a new event within GA4. If you want to create brand new events, so events that aren't based off a existing event, the best method to do that in my view is through Google Tag Manager, where you can create custom GA4 events and then push it to your property, and that can be based on any data that essentially that you acquire to be tracked. But within GA4 itself, you can only create new events based on existing ones. Brand new events will have to be implemented via tracking in GTM or through adding some code to your website directly. So when we go into conversions, so this is essentially where we will see specific events that you've marked as a conversion from the event section. You can also create a new conversion event. So if you, for example, create one called lead and then save it, that will now appear within this section. Of course, nothing will be tracked because you'll need to actually implement the tracking. So when you create an event and you give the event name the same as the conversion name, lead, then that should also populate into your reports and it'll be tracked as a conversion within GA4. Within here, this is where you can create your audiences. So if you remember earlier on in the video, I mentioned you can create audiences that you can then publish and send over to Google Ads. This is the section where you do that. So new audiences is sort of like building a segment. So you can create a custom one, or you can build ones that are already predefined. So in our instance, we had some predefined ones that were already made. So for this purpose of the tutorial, I'll click into a predefined one. So you can have recently active users, and this looks at people who have been active on your website within the last 30 days. And you can click save that specific audience. If you have Google Ads integrated with GA4, you will be able to push these audiences directly into Google Ads, and that allows you to do some clever marketing with these users that you have specifically created within GA4. Custom definitions. So we have custom definitions, and this is a section where you can create custom dimensions or metrics within GA4. Custom dimensions themselves can be created of two values. They can either be created off a event or they can be created from a user property. And there's 3 different scopes. So they can be event scope, which means they're purely based on events. They can be user scope, so like a user level custom dimension, or item scope, which means it's based on products, so your e-commerce setup. So when you set a dimension, you need to give it a dimension name. So for this example, we'll call it custom dimension, and then you can give it a description, so call it test, and then you select the event parameter that you want it to be across in when it's event scope. So it will be any event parameter that is useful to you, so you click that, and then you click save, and your custom dimension will be saved. When it's user, it's not a event parameter that you use. You have to use a user property, and user properties are different to event parameters. Whereas with event parameters, it's event level, and you create a custom event, and you add the parameters within it. User properties typically have to be added to the configuration tag of GA4. It's a value that does persist and it stays with that user. So a typical user property you might want to add would be something like the customer type, would be their login ID if you allow people to log into your website. It'd be those kind of values that are unique to a user. You set that as a user property, send it to GA4, and then once it arrives in GA4, you can then create custom dimensions off of it. Item parameters, similar to event parameters. So when you have, for example, a custom event for add to cart, within add to cart you would have parameters with that event. There'd be item parameters, and then those item parameters you'd be able to pull into this section here and create your custom dimension based with that item parameter as a result. So the next section that you have is custom metrics. So unlike custom dimensions, custom metrics are event scope only, and they can only be created off events that already exist on the website. So you have to define a name for the custom metric, a description, just like we do with custom dimensions, but then you have to select a specific parameter. So if you have a specific parameter within an event that you've already set up that you want to create a custom metric for, you can select that individually. So let's say we select campaign, and then you're then given a unit of measurement to decide. So it can be a standard, which is just a normal event counter. You can set a currency value, you can set it as a unit of distance or a unit of time as a result as well. And then you can save that feature and your custom metric will be saved. In my experience, custom metrics is an area that is rarely used within GA4 just because it uses an event data model. Creating custom events pretty much gives you everything that you need. So in my experience, this is an area that is rarely utilized at all, and I wouldn't be surprised if GA decided to remove this feature entirely. Cool, so you now have the data settings for your property, and there are 4 different areas within the data settings. So we have data collection. So this is where you can enable Google Signals, which gives you the cross-device data, more information about your users, for example, and can generally enhances the data. However, it is a very problematic feature within Europe, and Google Analytics 4 has actually been banned in countries in Europe, and this feature has been one of the reasons why it's been banned. So if you are within a European nation, I would not recommend that you enable Google Signals. You then have granular location, device data, advanced settings for ads personalization, which just allows you to enable it within specific regions. So when you click this cog, you can allow it or disable it for specific regions. Cool. And then you also have your data retention section within GA4. So by default, it is set to only 2 months. However, you will want to expand this to be for 14 months to get as much data as possible. This, however, doesn't impact all of your reporting. This only impacts the expiration section. So this will mean you only get 2 months of data within expirations by default, but you want to change this to 40 months just so that your expirations will be more useful to yourself. You also have this option called reset user data on new activity, and this is enabled by default and you will want to keep it enabled. So essentially what this means is that it will reset the retention period for a user after a new activity. So at the moment it's set to 2 months. So if a user comes on your website now, their retention period will be 2 months. But if they come on your website and then come again within another month, then from that month they come the second time, their user retention period will then be reset to another 2 months. meaning that the data retention will span 3 months in total. So every time they come and view your website, that data retention period will be reset. So that's essentially what that means. Cool. You also have data filters within GA4 properties as well. Similar to what you had in Universal Analytics, however, it is set up quite differently, and there's a different way to apply filters. So when you click create filter, at the moment in time, you only have 2 types of filters that you can include. So one is developer traffic. So this allows you to filter when people are in debug mode or developer devices from your website. And then the other is internal traffic. This is if you've identified a user as internal traffic. For the purpose of this tutorial, I won't go into how to do this in this specific tutorial, but where I will provide further follow-up videos on how to use both of these filters. And you also have channel groups. So this is a fairly new feature to GA4. Beforehand, you couldn't actually edit or amend the default channel grouping within GA4, but you now can, just like you could in Universal Analytics. So you can go into the default channel grouping and you can make amendments. So you can reorder it into the correct ordering that you'd like. You can add a new channel if there's no channel here that suits a source of traffic that's coming to your website, and you can make it much more personalized. You can also create a brand new channel group as well. So you can give it a group name. So I typically call my custom channels just marketing channel, and you can give a description if you want. And then you can reorder it as well, or give it, create a new channel as well. So it's very customizable at this point in time. Cool. So you have the option to import data from external sources into your GA4 account as well. So there's lots of different types of data that you can import. You can import like cost data, like product level data, user data with user IDs or client ID. Client ID is the ID that is given from the browser, from the cookie, whereas user ID is the actual user ID. And you can import any other offline event level data as well. It can be done via manual CSV upload or via SFTP. You then can choose the reporting identity. So you have a blended view, which evaluates data from user ID, Google Signals, device ID, and then model data. Or you have the observe view, which evaluates user ID, Google Signals, and then just device side data. So within here, you also have your attribution settings. So you can choose what specific attribution model that you want to be used within your reports for the majority of the time. There are lots of options in here. However, the vast majority of these attribution channels are going away this year. So I wouldn't spend too much time on playing around with this, because I believe all channel groupings apart from data driven and last click are actually being removed from GA4. You can also choose your look back window as well. So for acquisition conversion events, that's 30 days, and all others is set to 90 days recommended. I typically tend to leave it at this look back window, but if you do want a further look back window, you do have the option to do so. You then also have property change requests, similar to how you had account change requests in the past. And you have data deletion requests, which is a pretty useful feature of GA4. So this allows you to actually delete specific data from your GA4 property. So let's say, for example, you have lots of page URLs in your GA4 property for when people are searching for stores nearby, and those page URLs themselves actually capture the postcode of that person. Well, that's personal identifiable information, which you cannot capture in GA4. So data deletion requests, you can actually request Google to delete that data from your account so that it's not stored there at all. So that is a very useful feature that you can use to remove data that you don't actually want from GA4. You then have the debug view as well. So this will show you events while you're in a debug view of GA4 on your website. So for example, if you go into like preview mode on Google Tag Manager and you go on the website, the events that you fire and trigger will appear within this debug view. It's also a very useful, almost real-time view of events that happen on the website. So if you're testing a brand new custom event, you would test it in, like, for example, the preview mode in Google Tag Manager. You then come back into this debug view, and it will show you all the events that had fired during your preview session. So it's a very good way to validate the events that you are creating and testing in almost real time within the platform itself. You then have a list of all the products that you can link within GA4, and of course there are lots of options here that work typically well with Google Analytics, Google Ads, BigQuery, Ad Manager, and lots of options here. I won't go through all of them within this tutorial, but the setup is very similar to what it was like within Universal Analytics. I will be providing individual videos to help you try to integrate each individual product with your Google Analytics 4 account. And that's it. So that is my full tutorial of Google Analytics 4. I hope you all found it useful. If you have any questions, any comments, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I will see you on my next Google Analytics 4 video.